Hello and welcome to Analysing Avatar The Last Airbender. I am Dan, and as always I'm joined by Chris, the late airbender himself. We have just watched Sokka's Master. So we recorded the last episode. We've, ended the call. About 30 minutes passed. Chris presumably watched Sokka's Master. I became a great swordsman.
Yeah.
No, I really like this episode, but yeah, it is.
The thing is,
yeah.
if this was going to be one of my points, I know, sometimes people want to avoid the obvious thing. I tell you what, this episode needs a training montage.
Do you think?
Yeah, because this is not the only storyline where a lot of time has passed, Dan. Like the stuff with Iroh, let time pass. Anyway, well, let's get into it. Recap, and then we'll get into it.
So, for those who do not recall, this is the episode in which the gang save a small town from a fire after a meteorite crashes nearby, and it becomes very clear that obviously they all have these, extraordinary abilities, and he just has to sort of stand off to the side while they do these amazing things. Leaves him feeling a little bit low, Sokka, that is, I should say, and he ends up trying to resolve that with some retail therapy, maybe buying a new weapon. And in the end, Aang has the idea that maybe he needs a master. There's a nearby sword fighting master. That's what spawns the idea. So he goes and spends a day with this poor sword fighting master, and they very clearly say it's a day. They fit more things into that day than seem physically, humanly possible to fit into that day. But yeah, Sokka learns to appreciate himself a little bit, maybe, and respect that he is worthy and that he has things to bring. He makes a space sword from the piece of the meteorite, and then there's a big final showdown between him and his master, where he, Sokka gets to demonstrate his intelligence and skills in all that way. And then in the B plot, Iroh gets hench.
Exactly. So that is the well recapped. So the Iroh getting henched of it all, obviously that could have been happening for a while,
right?
But both plots make more sense if it's believed, and even everything, mate. Even the Katara and Aang and Toph missing Sokka plot. Everything is beneficial to have a undetermined amount of time that might have gone past. Mm-hmm. And, a montage of them sat there missing him whilst he does different trading things. I really like the episode as well, by the way. Just your joke maybe leads nicely to one of two big points about the episode that I have. And one of them being, chuck in a training montage, like, so that people can't make the joke you just quite fairly made.
Well, the thing, it's not so much about the training. They literally say it's been our day. That's the brain melting part. It's like the amount of things we see Sokka doing, you could absolutely, without that line of dialogue, assume it's multiple days. That's all been done across. That they've just been camping out nearby, and Sokka's been going back every day for a week or two. But when that montage ends of him doing training, and he's like, "What a great first day!" You're like, jaw drops. What? That was a day? We saw
it should have been. I don't know why they felt the need to determine that it was a day.
Well, I know why. I know 100% why. It's because in the last episode, Sokka made a real fucking stink about how much time they have left.
Yeah, that's true.
Every night they spent at that last place, Sokka was like, we had to get up 45 minutes earlier, blah, blah, blah. So the problem you have is when you create that level of a time thing. But that's the problem. They've created that. So here's the solution. And it's simple, Chris. Swap them around.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say.
Just swap them around. Have this episode. Yeah. Don't have the 1 day line, so he's been there a couple of weeks or whatever. Not a week or two. It doesn't need to, I'd be okay with it just being a small amount of time. And then, at the next episode, you slightly adjust Sokka's dialogue. So he goes, I know it's my fault, but we did just stop off for like 2 weeks in a town for me to learn sword fighting. We really are running out. We need to keep moving now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's all it would take. That's all it would take, and that's the only real issue that this has.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree completely. Because my original thought when you said swap them round was like, well, wouldn't you be feeling that way this episode? But no, you're right. Make that a part of it. Have it swap them round and have Sokka go, look, I know it's partly my fault, but we really lost the time on the training, guys. Or in this episode, do the training. You know what, guys? We haven't got time. We've been through this. No. This is important. Do it. You know, a bit back and forth about it.
Right. Yeah. Just something because it's just so weird that we spent so much of the last episode. Well, not so much, but like a good chunk of the last episode. Most of Sokka's argument was how little time they had to be doing everything. So the idea that they just stopped off for this amount of time this week does feel, in the wake of that, weird.
Do you think you'd noticed it if we hadn't watched the episodes so closely together? Because we've watched these episodes closely together.
Yeah, we literally watched one, recorded that last podcast. That's like what, an hour of recording, and then we.
Dan, don't peek behind the magic. What if we're shit and everyone can blame the fact that we've done it back to back?
Well,
and really, it's just our usual substandard podcasting.
No, that's our excuse though. Whether we do them back to back or not, it'll be substandard podcasting. At least this way, people will go, oh, they were tired. That's fair.
I am very sleepy, Dan.
You're a sleepy boy.
So sleepy that I had to comb through the episode to check they didn't do a training montage.
Well, they did. They did do a training montage.
No, but it's all... But even there, it's clearly distinctive. Like, it's not... I'm talking like a training montage. We see him shit at something. We see him a little bit better.
They do that.
We had a montage of him doing different things, but there was nothing within the doing different things.
Well, sorry, maybe you are very sleepy, Chris. He's fighting. So it's him doing a bunch of different stuff, and between every one, you show him practicing sword fighting with the servant guy, and the first time the servant guy decks him. And then he gets a little better, and then we cut to something else, and we come back, and he's a little better, and then he cuts. That's a training montage.
Yeah, but I'm talking
not set to a jaunty enough song for you.
The stuff he's learning in between, you know, with Dickin, it's not like the fights are repetitive, but you know he's dicking about with paintings, then he's dicking about, you know, looking for whatever. It wasn't Rocky, Dan. I wanted Rocky. I wanted montages.
But the Rocky montage is a bunch of random stuff that doesn't. It's like that's the key to a good montage. Is you've got your Mr. Miyagi. You've got your what's the trainer called from Rocky? I forget the guy's name. Who's like got a weird technique, something that's a bit unconventional, but it'll teach you a thing. You know, you can't take back the stroke of a sword, so you're gonna paint. And he's painting. It just needed a jaunty song, but it is a training montage for sure. Okay,
well, point is, Dan, he should have been there longer. That's what we're agreed on.
Yeah, 100%. The issue is more that that all happens, and you feel like that could have been weeks worth of stuff he was doing, because you see him slowly getting better at sword fighting. Every time they cut back to it, he's doing better against the training guy. And then it's like, what a great first day. I'm like, I'm sorry, that was a day? Like, I just couldn't get over that. When he said it, my mouth dropped open. Because I was getting ready in my notes to come here and complain. Wait a minute. Sokka just reamed Katara the previous episode about bloody, just like, oh, we can't do that. We got no time. And here he is dicking about spending a week learning sword fighting. That was going to be my complaint. But then they were like, it's a day. And I'm like, oh, it's just a day. But also, how is it just a day?
Yeah.
It's a shame because it does cast a shadow over what is otherwise an absolutely brilliant episode. So
yeah, because it's also a shame because like it's not like we've seen him be particularly proficient in it in the past, overly, unless I'm wrong. So
we've seen him
really
with that sort of short sword, that sort of like the club-like sword, the Water Tribe one. We have seen him use that, but you're right. No, not in a sort of like not like a broadsword type one like this one.
Yeah, nothing compared to the shit he's doing at the end when they have the fight. Like, It really is, like, not very much skill to an insane amount of skill in a day. But again, It's the same with all the plots. Really, getting annoyed by him, completely miss and love and adore him in a day. Iroh gets ripped in a day. Like, there just needed to be.
That's the other thing. Does Iroh? No, I don't think Iroh gets ripped in a day. They get away with it with Iroh because Iroh has the pillows under his thing. He looks fat, but he was probably started the day ripped. But they show us a day to explain why he's ripped now.
Yeah, completely. And he could have
so
been.
He's been doing that
ages.
all along.
Look, Dan, I want more. I want years to have gone past in this episode. Do you want to hear my other?
That's what I was just about to say. I was just about to say. So let's put my next sentence was going to be. Let's put that in a box because we could sit here all day and complain about the time save. And I do think that when we come back to our conclusions at the end of this discussion, we have to weigh up how much all the things that this episode does absolutely brilliantly are harmed by that. But for now, in a box, forget the time scale, forget how long, how quickly. Let's talk about the rest of the episode. So what did you like about the episode, Chris?
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought it was great to see.
I love that. I said, what did you like about the episode? And you go straight to, well, my only...
Yeah, which is why I then diverted to... but I'll give you my only other thing. They're being... Guys, peeps. Just because you got costumes...
Yep.
Doesn't mean you can be so laxed. All fucking pretense of being slightly covert. All of it got. They're just knocking on the doors of fire people, fire tribe members, and being like, let me spend a lot of time with you. And obviously it works out in this case. But I just think they're being way too lax. Like, just because they've got the costumes, they're just brazenly, like, the risk of them saying something to slip up or not knowing something to slip up is huge. And considering how covert they've been for 2 seasons, it just feels like they're like, well, we're in costume now, though. So we're fine. We'll be able to get away with this. Will you? Like, in this case, point proven in this case, Sokka's name gives him away. It's just the dude's okay with it. Their security's getting way too laxed, Dan, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. The show tries to cover it. There's a lot of this in this show where you go like, you can tell the writers realised and tried to do something to smooth it over. So this I know we said we put it in a box, but just as an example that's the most recent, they obviously wrote this episode with the intention of Sokka's training having taken the place over a couple of days, and then went, crap, we just had him moaning at Katara about how much time they were spending, and then added the, what a great first day line, to sort of cover that, right? So we've had a few examples of where they've thrown in an odd line like this here and there to make you go, okay, cool, fine, like that, it is what it is. So the other example being, I don't know if you recall, it was the when Aang and Katara were leaving the Water Nation, the Northern Water Tribe, at the end of season 1. We were like, has Aang been there long enough to master waterbending? And they're like the quick passing line, because the writers clearly realised you'd have that thought. Katara can teach you now. She's learned enough. She's a master. She mastered it in that time. Aang didn't, sort of just brushed over, but it kind of covers it. The same thing is true here. I've spent so much time thinking of other examples. What was the thing I was originally talking about? What was your point? Because I was very round the houses.
They're just getting a bit laxed with their security.
Right. So they covered that last week, or no, 2 weeks ago, when they put on their Fire Nation costumes. They were like, well, this is just the same as if we were in the Earth Kingdom or whatever. Now we're free to wander around and interact with people because we're in our costumes. Like, they had that line as a defense for why they can just be free now to sort of interact with people. And it's why when they went to that village last week, they just were interacting with people and weren't like hiding. Because they were sort of saying in that first episode of this season, we don't want to be hiding in caves the entire time we're in the Fire Nation. So we'll get ourselves some disguises, and that'll allow us to sort of wander around. But then again, last week someone was talking loudly about defeating this Fire Lord and had to be shushed. So, I guess that's what happens when you entrust covert missions to a bunch of teenagers. That's the issue, I suppose. But yeah, the show does that a lot. A lot of like brief hand waving moments that kind of paper over some of those cracks. It's surprisingly common in this show, and I'm realizing that more and more the more we watch it with a more critical eye on this viewing. But I mean, is that enough to sort of put you off this episode? Do you think, or is that like a pretty minor? Was that a nitpick corner? Have we done it again? Did we visit nitpick corner without realizing it, and now we got to trek back?
No, because it's not enough to hamper. I don't think it's nitpick corner either, because that's not a point about this episode specifically. That's a point about this whole series so far. Like right. Even last week, they were being a bit fast and loose with the volume of interaction with the Fire Tribe, and it seems a bit like, I get that's the plot of this season, but as you said last week at the end, they've sort of embedded a reason to not need to get him trained by someone in the Fire Tribe. So, but they still, it almost feels like trying to justify the title in the face of logic. It's not a nitpick for this episode. It's a point about this season so far, 4 episodes in. I think this episode's great. I love the fact that the guy knew and suspects, but he's so dedicated to the art that, the petty sort of squabbles doesn't mean anything to him. I love the fact that, in a way, that the fact whilst it's a complaint, that the show addressed it, because right away at first, when he's being dismissive and Sokka gets it, which is also a really nice moment, but Sokka gets the right to train because his attitude is, no, I'm not that great. My mind is then immediately like, well, he's giving himself away. Like, it's very clear he's not Fire Tribe, because a Fire Tribe person would have the arrogance to think they were. So, but actually, he did. Yes, it did. But that's factored into the story. The fact that he gave himself away between that and his name is woven into the story. So actually, it's handled, whilst it is a complaint about this season as a whole, or these 4 episodes, actually I think it was handled very well in this episode. Because I literally went, well, surely that's going to give him away. Yes, yes, it did. That's part of the plot. So yeah, I think there's a lot to love in this episode. The Iroh stuff is fantastic. Like, I just love it. Like, he's doing such a good job. And I can't wait to see where that goes. So yeah, and I tell you now, spoilers for, final thoughts or whatever. No, I don't think any of those complaints, nitpicks, whatever that we've had at the beginning affect the overall enjoyment of the episode. Because I think the episode's brilliant.
Yeah, I would agree, because I think the actual story of this is great. The notion of Sokka as this group's Xander, for those who are familiar with Buffy, Willow learns like magic, Buffy's like a vampire slayer, then Xander, the third member of the group, he's just present. They do multiple stories over the years about Xander feeling a bit inadequate next to the rest of the gang. Giles brings like the smarts and stuff, so their sort of Scooby gang is like, consists of 3 people that are very capable of being helpful, and then him, and they do whole stories about it. And the idea that Sokka is this group's version of that. And what's interesting is, I think an early criticism you might want to aim at this is that it sets up Sokka as the group's sort of least useful member with a bit of a false pretense, because the show has always been very good at making sure we understand how Sokka is useful to this group. So in any other episode, that opening scene when the meteorite hits, it would have been, in any other episode, it would have been Sokka dictating, okay, Aang, dig a trench, or Toph, dig a trench, Aang, bring in the air to blow it this way, Katara, do the... Like, it would have been his plan. Even if he hadn't been the one doing all the great things, they usually make sure in every fight, and that's actually what's slightly against them here, because in this episode, when they have the plan and then enact it, you go, well, of course Sokka's feeling low. He didn't get to do anything there, but he didn't get anything to do anything then. They've almost written him too well in the past for this plot to make sense, almost. The reason I think they get away with it, though, is because I think the idea is that even, the best of us, like, are going to have days like that, where we don't feel particularly useful to society, to the world. I mean, most days I do this podcast, I think, God, what do we do? What is this contributing to anything?
And let me just reassure you, Dan, you're absolutely correct.
Exactly. Exactly.
To feel that way.
I
agree.
They get away with it because we all have days where we see it that way, regardless of its truth.
They get away with it, but you don't think, and I didn't bump up against this as particularly a problem, but now that you said it, I think you're absolutely right. Do you not think they could have, though, instead of getting away with it, they could have done a catastrophe that simply required bending?
Right, not a plan as such. Yeah.
Could have been a fight, could have been whatever, or maybe even, end the last episode and do a little bit of follow through. The kind of the action sequences, the fight in the last episode, or put this episode after one. Even if we're doing our swap it round, I can't remember what episode 2 was, but do you know what I mean? Have a fight, have him feel useless. And this is dealing with the fallout of that. Yeah,
the only problem with that is that in these days, these shows were kind of like, it was like episodic, or don't even pitch this to us at Nickelodeon, unfortunately.
Oh, but it's not. Come on. They've done themes and fallouts and stuff running through.
Never a direct scene that then becomes the plot for the next episode. There's the overarching plots for the season, but ending one episode with essentially the opening scene of what would be normally your opening scene of your next episode, is a bit further than I think they'd be willing to go.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, so make it a bit of a... Yeah, do that then. Have a fight at the beginning or something.
Yeah, just something that just needs raw bending, to solve, not thinking. Yeah, agreed. Because it does. You just go, well, any other episode you'd have made Sokka way more useful here. But I generally think it's such a great characterization of Sokka, because it just fits with something like everyone goes through some stage or another, but he has it in a more visceral way than anyone else, because he's literally physically less capable than the people he's surrounded by. So it's such all right. Is it an obvious plot? Well, yeah. Yeah. I mean, eventually they were going to get to this one way or another. Is it executed brilliantly? And is there actually a really coherent lesson at the end of this about maybe having a little bit more belief in yourself, and understanding that strengths aren't just the things you think you need? It's that old thing of, what's that line from? There's something says, if you've got strengths, if I say you've got strengths. Oh fuck! Have we just done a Harry Potter? We've done a Harry Potter. We have. It's an Ad-I Moody quote from Goblet of Fire. So there's a bit in Goblet of Fire when Moody's like, for the next challenge, play into your strengths. And Harry says, I've not got any strengths, because he's all panicked and worried. And Moody's like, you've got strength if I say you've got strength. And it's, he's referring to Harry's skill on the Quidditch pitch, which hadn't occurred to Harry as a potential solution for the problem in front of him. Again, take a shot for Harry Potter. We did Doctor Who last week, Harry Potter this week. I thought we'd done well last week, only doing one of the two.
We're growing as podcasters. 10 years in.
I'm annoyed though, because I thought of the quote before I realised what it was from. So I'm annoyed that it turned out to be another fucking Harry Potter reference.
You gotta just let it happen. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's fine. So for me, the idea that it's he's not seeing. He's focused on the wrong things and learning that not everyone has the same skill set, and just appreciating what it is you bring to the table. Not everyone can be good at everything. That's just the way the world works. Just focus on the thing you do have, And in Sokka's case, it's his quick thinking, it's his intelligence, it's his ability to improvise in creative ways. I mean, it is his creativity. And this whole episode goes to both take the character to a slightly sort of sad place and then bring him back, but also demonstrate to us, the audience, the value of Sokka to the team. And it does it in a really fun way, because also, we've not talked about it yet, but this episode is fucking hilarious. This is such a funny episode.
Very much so.
We'll come to the Iroh stuff in a bit, because I think that's a different, that's a heartbreaking / really exciting sequence of clips. But just looking at the Sokka stuff, this episode is hilarious. I also love that the initial answer is retail therapy. Because I'm pretty sure there's an episode in season 2 where Sokka's a bit sad, and the answer is he goes shopping. So I think that's not the first time they've done that. I think it's the Blind Bandit episode, because he buys a new bag that goes with the belt that Aang wins when he beats Toph in the wrestling event.
I think it's just the way he burst open the door and he's like, retail therapy, or let's go shopping, or whatever he says.
Yeah.
It's very funny.
Yeah. We've seen that he does that to bring himself, to cheer himself up earlier as well. So it's a very consistent part of his character. But this whole episode, all the stuff when he's in the in the training montage, Chris, all the stuff in that is all really funny as well. Like it's little details when he ruins that guy's garden, he looks upset and he's like chilling out because he's moved the rock to make himself a little comfy bed, and he says, "Can I get a drink, please? A cold drink?" And you think the master's going to say something like negative about what Sokka's done, and he just turns to the servant and goes, "I'd like a lemon in mine, please." And then if you look two shots later, he takes a sip out of a drink with a lemon in it.
Yeah,
such a nice detail.
The training scenes have a lot of really funny stuff in.
Training scenes?
Do you think though that humour, and I'm all in, by the way, love the humour for this reason, right. But do you think to be I don't know what the phrase is, but to present the other side, if you're not a fan of Sokka and the humour that Sokka typically brings,
right,
then this episode isn't as enjoyable.
I guess that's fair, but I would...
That's probably true of any episode that focuses in on a character that you don't like.
Yeah, but also I would say that one of the reasons Sokka is... I think Sokka's the most relatable of this gang, especially to us. I can't speak for you, Chris, but to me as a person who can't physically bend the elements to my will, I feel like Sokka is inherently the most relatable character in this show, and I always find people gravitate to the comedy characters as their favourites. When you ask people... I've never looked and seen, but I bet you if there's a survey of people's favourite characters from Friends, I would suspect Chandler ranks highly more often than not, and then Phoebe as well, because they're the characters that more of the comedy derives from. And because Sokka's a comedy character, I think that's why that's one of the ways in which they probably get away with it. I could be wrong.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And
people like that.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it as a criticism, because actually I love Sokka and love this episode for it. It's often, I'd say though, it's one of the more whilst we cut to Iroh and the other members of the gang. It feels like one of the more centric episodes. Do you know what I mean? Like we've done episodes focusing on, like last week's episode, arguably focused in on Katara, but I feel like the others were involved more than this. And again, they write around it brilliantly. Well, in that case, make the plot that they miss him with the other guys. But I think the more you love Sokka, the more you're going to get out of this episode, is what I'm saying, I think.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. 100% agree. I think you're exactly right. I think obviously, yeah, it's a full on Sokka fest. It's turn up the dial to 100, and they even make that gag. They make that part of the story that the other guys miss his comedic presence when he returns back to their camp. They're like, say something funny, and he's like what? And they're like, ha ha ha, classic Sokka, which is like very good. One of the sweetest bits of that, and I'll say it, Dan, because it's obviously on your list because it's Toph related, but I'll say it so you don't seem so obsessed. Is the bit where she's like, oh, I don't know, they missed you or something, and went really red. I thought that was very, very sweet. Yeah, I agree. It's a really nice moment. I mean, obviously, Toph, best character. We know this. This is true. This is fact. This is fact. It's just what I'm saying.
Yeah, she's some people's favourite character. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
Yeah. No one's denying she's some people's favourite character, Dan. I don't think she's everyone's favourite character, but...
No. I understand.
Yeah. It's got weird. I don't know why it's got weird.
I think I've let it get weird by just giving...
the silences. Yeah. Yeah, the inflections and the silences in which you've given your answers have somehow made it weird.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm enjoying it, Chris. I'm having a great time.
What? See, there we go. This moment we're reveling in that you're enjoying. This is the reason people shouldn't know that we recorded 2 in a row.
I think this is fine. Chris. I think Robert Patrick is very, very good, and he's particularly good in this episode of Avatar. He's the voice of what's the master's name? I always forget this master's name. Piandao. He's the voice actor, does that role, and I think he's very good. It's so funny to me that he, the actor that portrayed the T-1000 and whatever it was, the liquid metal Terminator from the second Terminator, who barely speaks in that movie, provided such a great, awesome, voice performance here.
Nice. Yeah, no, it was very good. Really sells it because, it's if you'd have told me going into this episode, there's going to be a Fire Tribe master, and it's slightly going to hinge on you believing that he's happy to basically let the Avatar go, I'd be like, you're going to have to really sell me on that. And, he and the script do, absolutely do it. And a lot of it, I think, is in his performance. He's not got too much to go on that, but the way he delivers the lines to show his commitment to the craft throughout, not just in that scene, really helped to sell that. Yeah,
he's got a real Iroh vibe, which is obviously, we'll talk about in a minute, sealed at the end with the White Lotus tile. But the way of the sword doesn't belong to one nation. We've already heard Iroh, when training Zuko to redirect lightning, that the way he learnt to redirect lightning was to travel the world and learn from other nations. He learnt from the water tribes how to let that energy flow through him to redirect lightning. So the idea of learn from the others and knowledge should be shared. One world and all, those borders are in minds rather than in reality, and that's how you convince me he doesn't care about the Avatar, is by making me understand that he sort of is that way of thinking, like with Iroh, it's again, we've talked about this before, it's another slight quick cheat way to do it, but it's absolutely fair. It's to invoke Iroh to make me understand this character and sell me on his motivations is an absolutely very clever and fair way to do that. And it works brilliantly. Even though they try briefly to play the surprise of, he's going to fight Sokka because, thingy, you never really buy. They've done such a good job convincing me that he doesn't care where anyone comes from and wouldn't, that when he does turn and swing his sword at Sokka, they want you for a minute to wonder if it's because he's just found out Sokka isn't from the Fire Nation, but you never really buy that, do you? Or I certainly didn't.
No, not at all. And my favourite moment of that was the way he just casually drops in that he's figured out Aang's there as well. And he just says something like, well, it's probably not in my best interest to fight the Avatar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm an old man now. I'm not sure I could handle a fight with the Avatar. And they're all like, it's very quickly done. So before we move on to Iroh, the White Lotus. So, obviously, was it last season when Iroh was... So in the first season, Iroh was... he was upset because he'd lost his White Lotus Pai Sho tile. So Pai Sho is like a checkers-like game that I don't really understand, where they've got these different tiles with symbols on them, and it's like checkers or chess, or something in between the two. I don't know. But it's he had lost the tile that was the White Lotus one. And then in the second season, him and Zuko were on the run and looking for support and some help, they visit a bar and someone's playing Pai Sho. And when he starts playing, he plays the White Lotus tile, and the person says, I see you favour the White Lotus gambit. And then he has some sentence he replies with, and it turns out the White Lotus is some sort of secret society. And I don't know if you recall this, Zuko's not allowed in. and then they help Iroh out, getting him into the Earth Nation. I think they get him. I think they help him get on the boat that takes him into Ba Sing Se. So we haven't heard from the White Lotus since, other than that it's some sort of society that Iroh is a member of. And at the end of this episode, a White Lotus Paisho tile is given to Sokka for later use. Any thoughts on that in general?
Well,
I think it's nice. I think it continues a very small subplot that's been sort of buried through the show, but I think it's done very well.
Yeah, I mean, I assume it could potentially be key. It's sort of all of those things imply, he reveals he doesn't really care, and he gives over a White Lotus. Iroh is, if you tell me to name a Fire Tribe character who seems a bit on the fence about all of this, I'd name Iroh. So maybe a secret society that at some point, I assume now, come to help the gang. Would be my suggestion. And that's exciting to see.
Yeah, especially if it's like a bunch of sort of like other characters that are sort of follow in the footsteps of these two characters. The two we know for sure are members at this point. It's I think they refer to. Did they refer to Iroh as a Grand Lotus or something like that? I might be misremembering. So clearly, this society, whatever it is, Iroh is a member of. And I will also say that it's also it's very likely at this stage that it's not just Fire Nation either, because they're in the Earth Kingdom when he plays that gambit in the bar. So I would say it's implied that it spreads a bit further than that,
which is exciting.
Oh, you know what I think it was actually when Iroh plays the White Lotus Gambit, or whatever they call it, playing Paisho, I think they put all the pieces down in a special alignment that when you see it from above also makes a White Lotus.
Oh, that does sound familiar.
Yeah, I think it's not just that he says whatever line he says back, it's also... Sorry, I was just going to point this out in case listeners can hear. My laptop's just, all I'm doing is looking at my notes on a document, and my laptop's fan is going as if I'm trying to render something incredible, and it's straining under the weight of what I'm asking it to do. I'm sorry, laptop. This is not heavy lifting. You do not need to be having your fan on right now. So I'm sorry if anyone can hear that. It doesn't normally do that. I reckon this laptop's on its way out. I hope not. Anyway,
it feels that way, but I don't think it's been that long since you had it, is it?
2017.
I suppose in laptop life.
Yeah, it's 4 or 5 years. Yeah, I remember that weird summer when we had to stop recording podcasts because my laptop died.
Yeah,
and it was
that's why it didn't seem that long ago.
I could properly afford to replace it.
Yeah, that's why it didn't seem that long ago. But actually, you're right. That was thinking about where I was living at the time. That was 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. 2017. I only know it's 2017 because the replacement laptop I got is a 2017 model that is shit. Anyway, that's a different issue. Apple can go fuck themselves, is my point. Anyway. Yeah. So let's talk about Iroh. What are your thoughts on Iroh? I've talked too much about the White Lotus. I'm sick of saying the words.
I thought it's brilliant. I love very Iroh, typical Iroh plan. Very in character. I thought he was a handsome man to begin with, but seeing him all buff, wowzers, he's looking good. I think it's just so Iroh, isn't it? I think it's a really great, interesting plot, and I'd love to know what it's building to. Whether it's building to him just kicking ass, whether he's getting that way in prep, who knows? But yeah, I think it's all... Yeah, it's brilliant, basically. I think it's setting up something really exciting for, what the possibilities of that storyline are.
Yeah, I think it's good because it tells us a lot about his character as well. It's like his, it's not a brash brute force plan. It's a very calculated make myself appear like something I'm not to throw them off the scent. It's very patient as plans go. which feels automatically very Iroh. It's a thought through plan, clearly, and that is kind of brilliant. That the bit that always gets me is, I emotionally speaking, when the episode starts and they slide that bowl of rice in, and he like crawls over, scrambles over to it, and starts stuffing food from the floor in his mouth, like you just like your heart sinks, even knowing that he's about to like pop up, sit up normally upright, and very, properly sort of like eat his rice like a civilized human. He's, just even knowing it's fake, it's so upsetting to see, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, but equally though, it makes it so vindicating when he does sit up normally.
Right.
It's such a moment of triumph. It's like, oh yeah.
And when he's doing the push-ups where he's clapping in the middle later, and then the guard hears the clapping and comes over, and when he looks through the door, he's like huddled in a corner, just like clapping at the air, like he's trying to like swat a fly in a really sort of like the animation on Iroh in this episode and his movements, absolutely incredible. Like it's such a brilliant performance without really any voice acting, and it's not required because of the way this character is built. It's actually only just occurred to me for the very first time that obviously at the end of season 2, or towards the end of recording of season 2, Mako passed away. So it's possible the reason he doesn't speak in these early episodes is actually not a choice, but rather while we find his replacement. I'd never thought of that.
Oh yeah, because
that literally never occurred to me.
Oh yeah, because he doesn't talk. He doesn't talk to Zuko either, does he?
Nope. He's not said a word all season. That had literally never occurred to me.
I mean, it works though. It's to the show, that.
Obviously.
Oh
yeah. It's one of those like really creative solutions that actually improves the thing.
Yeah. It's a devastating problem. Just to make that really clear. I'd rather have the actor around. But yeah, no, it's created something really powerful. It's a great example, if that is the case, of the writers taking a tragedy and making it work in a way that feels respectful.
Yeah, but also like really actually like works in a way with what we already knew about the character. It's not like it doesn't feel out of character for him to be behaving this way.
No, not at all.
Again, it's about him sort of almost controlling people's perception of him so that when he enacts whatever it is he's planning for. And it's also worth noting, in the animation, they don't just sell him selling his like weakness and madness to the guards, but when they go, they sell his strength. The shot of him doing one-armed pull-ups while using his other arm to eat an apple is just one of the most badass things I think I've ever seen. It's like...
Yeah, and let the record show, Dan, when I work out, that's how I look.
Yeah. Oh, I don't doubt it. I do not doubt it for a second, Chris.
We've all done it. We've all grabbed an apple, gone to the top of a prison bar, and pulled ourselves up.
Yep. Correct.
What other notes have you got, if any?
I just wrote down the quote from Sokka right at the beginning to Toph. "You've never not seen anything like this."
Yeah, that was insensitive and yet brilliant.
Yeah, very, very good. Let's see. I think a lot.
And actually, not that insensitive because of the way it follows on from what she has said. To be fair,
right? Yeah, I was just wondering that myself. I even wrote the word. I genuinely, Chris, you're gonna think I'm lying. I genuinely wrote "love the training montage."
Let's move on quickly, Dan.
The lemon in the drink, clapping the hands, crazy old man thing. We've done that. Oh yeah, we've had a good first day of training, and then I've just written mouth open. Like, yeah. I also like when the master is sort of saying like, "You've impressed me today," and it wasn't your skills. And then he pauses and goes, "It certainly wasn't your skills." It's just very well delivered. It's a great joke.
Yeah, that's a beautiful acting.
Yeah, I also wrote down "the way of the sword doesn't belong to one nation," which is just a great line. And I wrote down the joke at the end. You should really choose a more appropriate name while in the Fire Nation. Maybe like Lee. There's a million Lees. It's another great line.
I hope we see that. I hope from now on he does just refer to himself as Lee.
So yeah, I think that's all my no. Oh yeah, let's do the thing we said we'd do. Do the concerns about time take away from any of the brilliant things that are in this episode in terms of how they handle Sokka and Iroh and all the fun that there is to be had here?
Like I said earlier, I don't think so at all, personally.
No, I would agree. And also, come on, Space Sword. That's awesome. That's just fucking awesome. I don't care what you say. You're never going to get me off the idea that a Space Sword is a genius thing. Also, that tiny bit of Space Earth for Toph to sort of the Space Earth, Space Rock for Toph to shape now, also very cool.
Yeah, and I love the way when he's like, "Can I go and get a material?" And he's like, "Of course." I can't remember what the line back is.
I think he says, "I wouldn't have it any other way." I think is what he said.
Yeah, it's like they're so in sync that further proof that Sokka's the right person and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah, cool. Right, shall we do trivia?
Let's triv it up.
There we go. Gave you a bit of space to do it because last couple of times we've both got things we say now. I say, I'm going to give you some trivia, and you say triv it up. And sometimes we step on each other, Chris. And you know what? I wanted to give you the space. You deserve it.
I appreciate that. I really appreciate it, mate.
Should tell that to me the rest of the podcast, right, guys?
Oh, well, no, because a lot of the rest of the time I don't appreciate you. But in that instance, I really did appreciate it.
Oh, no, I was talking about me talking too much.
Oh, Christ. Giving up the ghost on that years ago, mate.
Yep. It's fair.
I imagine anyone that, I imagine sometimes if you isolated my audio, I'd sound like a DJ. It's just me going, yeah, but,
You know what's funny is that that certainly did used to happen. I think I have gotten better, but I also think not to overanalyze our own podcast, but I do think as well now, I've found that you sometimes anticipate me having a lot to say, and I'll stop and let you go and be like, okay, I'm just going to let Chris talk for ages now, and you'll have 2 sentences to say and then stop because you're anticipating me interrupting with another thought. But then there's dead air, possible. And I have to jump in because there's dead air. So it's kind of become a weird vicious cycle that we...
Also, sometimes you just take a lot of my points. So you'll do a massive rant, expect me to take over with a massive rant, and then you'll be like, oh, sorry, I took a sip of my tea. And it's like, well, yeah, you took all the things to say. What was I meant to do?
Have an original thought, Chris. That's the problem, isn't it? We sometimes we're so aligned that it is a bit I say what I'm thinking, assuming you have different thoughts. Even though historically we often agree. So yeah, I did. Yeah, it's true. Anyway, let's triv it up. I thought would have been a great time for you to say, I'm going to give you some trivia since I took yours.
I was too busy being offended by you stealing mine.
Offended?
I was too shocked.
Annoyed, grumpy, offended. I've offended you by doing it. That's a very specific term.
It offends me, Dan, that you thought you could have got away with it. Okay, no, that's... but also, I can't do it. I can't be like, yeah, go on then, Dan. Give me some triv me.
Let's triv it up. Triv it up. I can do your thing.
Not very well.
No. Chris, it wasn't a competition, number one, but two,
Okay, okay then, Dan, why don't you give us some trivia? No, it's not as good.
I'm going to give you some trivia.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. So, the waterfall that Piandao asks Sokka to paint is heavily based on the Gullfoss waterfall in Iceland, which is famed for having rainbows. Now, I saw that and went, I think I've been to that waterfall, because I visited Iceland a couple of years ago. Went back through my Instagram, have a photo of that waterfall with a rainbow on my timeline.
They say don't go chasing waterfalls, not in Dan's case, because he went and chased that waterfall and he found one on his Instagram. We shouldn't do two at the same time. Carry on.
So, apparently, prior to the beginning of this final season, the show's creators travelled around Iceland, gathering inspiration for the Fire Nation's landscape. The reason this is, if anyone's thinking,
cool.
why Iceland? Iceland is an island very much shaped by its historical volcanic activity. When we first arrived there and we were on the bus, we could see these long, huge, empty spaces of green, and I was like, "Wow, just grass everywhere!" And I was quickly disproved of that that impression, because what it actually is rock. It's lava covered the land, destroyed all vegetation, and then hardened into essentially rock, very slippy rock, and then moss has grown on it over the years. It's not grass, it's moss. So they look like, from a distance, huge fields of green, but they're actually just rock formations. Obviously, they've very much made it that the Fire Nation is a very volcanic area. We've seen volcanoes multiple times when we visited the Fire Nation in the past. So the idea that the land would be shaped in similar ways is kind of genius, and I love that consistency. I did compare my photo to the image in this episode, and they are very similar. It's incredible.
Except presumably the episode doesn't have you in it.
Correct. Yes. Well, I'm not in the photo that's on my Instagram either. It's a photo of the scene. Look, a beautiful scene like that definitely doesn't need my mug making it worse. That's for sure. It's an incredible sight. Like the one thing Iceland has is spectacular things to see, and if you're ever going to photograph them, you don't want my face in them.
That's fair.
It would do nothing but drag those things down. When Toph is playing with her meteorite rock at the end of the episode, one of the shapes she forms is like a weird sort of splat, which is obviously a reference to the Nickelodeon logo at the time of the episode's airing.
I wonder what that was.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a very specific design. The blade that hangs on display in the weapon shop, the one that initially makes them ask about the sword, the sword maker / master, is designed off a commemorative Qing Dynasty sword that Sifu Kisu actually owns. He got it in the, and once again, it's this week's make Dan pronounce a thing he doesn't feel confident pronouncing, Zhangzhou Wushu Festival, which is a 1500. That was a celebration for the 1500 year of the Shaolin Temple in China. So he acquired the sword during that ceremony. It was like a commemorative thing he got. And Sifu Kisu, for those who don't know, who don't remember from previous episodes, is the guy that performed a lot of the martial arts from this show on camera for the animators to copy. So he actually was very, very instrumental in developing the martial arts styles used in the show. So there you go.
Cool. Nice.
The sword is based on a sword he actually has, is basically the simple version of that trivia that doesn't require me to pronounce a bunch of shit I can't pronounce. And I say shit dismissively of myself more than the things.
Yeah.
It's just frustrating because I want to get it right, but I know I'm not going to. The armor that Aang wears in the weapon shop, which is a very funny moment when you have this glorious shot of Aang in this like big lion-headed like armor or whatever it is. It's apparently inspired by an early toy design of Aang in an armored suit that was shown to them. Obviously that didn't happen. Additionally, the left gauntlet of that armor is apparently similar to the right gauntlet of a Soul Calibur character called Nightmare. Haven't played a Soul Calibur game since I was about 15 and don't remember if that's true, but I'm going to assume it is.
No. Good trick.
Good triv. White Lotus appears a number of times. If you actually look, the symbol of the White Lotus appears, or maybe it just says the White Lotus. Maybe it's like the flower, a White Lotus, appears a number of times in Piandao's castle. It's pretty cool. Piandao suggests Sokka use the name Li while he's in the Fire Nation, as it's an extremely common name. A name so common that it's the name Zuko used when he lived in the Earth Kingdom during the second book. He told everyone his name was Li.
They must have known that, and like there was a slight like nod to that.
100%. But what's even funnier about that is in the episode Zuko Alone, Zuko meets a kid called Li.
That's good.
So I think that's a real.
I want that, like I think I may have said earlier, or certainly thought earlier. I want that to continue. I want to see him introduce himself to Li to people.
I'm on board. I think it's a good idea.
Himself as
Piandao's advice to Sokka about imagining the sword as part of your own body mirrors the advice Suki gave him about using the fan in the first season, and then bringing it full circle to Zuko and Lee from Zuko alone. He gives similar advice to Lee when the young child wields his two swords, and it says they're not separate but two halves of the same deadly weapon. So there you go. And then the final piece of trivia is Robert Patrick, Piandao's voice actor, played the T-1000 in Terminator 2 Judgment Day. The T-1000 could literally make his arms into swords, paralleling what Piandao says to Sokka when comparing the sword to one long, very sharp arm. Now, I'd like to slightly adjust that trivia, if that's okay. The T-1000 could literally make his arm into two swords, coincidentally paralleling what Piandao says to Sokka when comparing the sword to a long.
Yeah, it doesn't. Arm. It doesn't. That doesn't feel like a reference.
No, it is. Yeah, absolutely, it is not a reference. But anyway, how are we feeling? We enjoying season 3. How are we feeling overall?
It's been good.
Before we do the
really enjoying it. Really enjoying it. It's been good. They're setting up a lot of really good stuff. They got a lot of pieces on the board. I think I would suspect they're going to need to bring some of those pieces together. Mm-hmm. Maybe Zuko's sister and Chief Fire Dude working together or something like that, or Iroh forming, the White Lotus being a thing that helps out Aang and the gang, etc. I don't think these pieces are going to stay separate for too long. Enjoying it.
Great. So we do have a listener question from Avishai. Who's asked a question before and has done so via being a patron. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I've got a question for those guys, or if you're listening to this and thinking, God, I really want to hear their thoughts on next week's episode right now, well, if you go over to our Patreon, you have both the ability to ask us a question, which we may answer on a podcast if we get round to it. We also put up the episodes a week early there, so you can hear us. You can hear us discuss The Beach right now. By going over to Patreon and giving as little as $1 a month. That is assuming you're not already a patron. If you're a patron, be patient. You're going to have to wait a week for the one after. So we got a question this week, as I said, from... I've clicked off the question. Avishai. So Avishai asks, with the TV series cast slowly being confirmed, what would be your dream cast for an Avatar TV series? Now, this is a very good question, but unfortunately I have a very boring answer, which is that I actually would not want to cast this with with lots of known names, personally. Looking at the cast they've done so far, there are a couple of names that stand out as being recognizable, but I think mostly you want to go unknown, which is what they've done. Because I think, all right, it's great. You've got Daniel Day Kim as the Fire Lord, which is great casting, and there's a few other actors that have sort of been named that are oh yeah, we know those people. Mostly, especially for the main three, they've gone very they've gone with a lot of young kids that I'm not particularly familiar with, and I don't think are necessarily household names. So I think that's actually how I would approach it. Obviously, also not quite as white as the movie would be my other my other casting preference. So I will say honestly, so far the live action series, for all people's concerns about it, in terms of casting, they're doing pretty much what I would do, which is try and find some young, lesser known actors that fit the roles that aren't white as snow.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I can't think of anyone of any character. The only thought I had was that the sister from, I don't know the name of the actress, apologies, the sister from Shang-Chi could be the sister here.
The sister from Shang-Chi? Oh, you mean could be Azula?
Yeah.
I suppose she'd be a tiny bit old to play Azula, because they've gone quite young with their Zuko.
Oh yeah, but this is fictional casting, isn't it? So you go a little bit older with Zuko, maybe.
Right? Yeah. Oh yeah.
She could pull off
my bad.
She could pull off the fighting. She could pull off the evil quite well. That was kind of an instinctive thought.
Yes. No, that's a good thought. She would suit
And
that
then
role.
I thought of Jack Black for Iroh and dismissed it out of my mind immediately.
Wow, that would have been a bold choice.
Because I was like, nope, that doesn't work. I can't think of too many because I think like you.
Well, you think of the only other one to help give this a more to give some sort of answer is I did see the other day, Ming-Na Wen tweeted that someone had suggested she should play June, the bounty hunter from season 2. Do you remember the lady with the sort of like blind anteater creature that can smell for a bajillion miles and was helping Azula and Zuko track down the Avatar? I think that was in early season 2. Ming-Na Wen, someone said should play June, and Ming-Na Wen was like, I'm into this. Anyone else? And I was like, yes, please. I would love that. It's a great small role for Ming-Na Wen to do. So yes.
I think obviously as well, Sean Gunn should play Momo.
I would absolutely love that.
I think you'd be brilliant at that.
Yeah. I'm wondering if they're gonna bring in D. Bradley Baker to voice them again. If they're going to be CGI creatures, I suppose you get the same guy to do the voices, don't you? They might as well make the same noises.
Yeah, very true.
He does the noises for both Momo and Appa, which does feel like it shouldn't be a thing. Like that shouldn't be the same person.
No, he's doing great work then.
Yeah, he is. He's great. He's done so many great voices. Like if you look at just take a glance at his. Not now because we'd literally spend all day going, oh, he was in that, and he was in that, and he was in that. But his voice is all over everything. Like to the point where on his Wikipedia page, it doesn't list the movies and TV shows he's done. It's a separate article. D. Bradley Baker filmography is a separate article. Wow. Yeah. I mean, you could just glance through that forever. Teen Titans, Invader Zim, Stuart Little, obviously Avatar, American Dad, All Grown Up, Ben 10. He's done Mickey Mouse stuff. He's done Spectacular Spider. Like we could sit here all day and read 1,000 things he's been involved in. Star Wars, Clone Wars, Family Guy, Looney Tunes. I mean, it's just absurd. Just goes on and on. Oh, Gravity Falls. Yes, please. Anyway. So yeah.
Nice. Great question.
Very good question. Sorry we didn't give a better answer, but unfortunately the right answer is the less exciting one. I think it would be fun maybe to do if we were going to go crazy and do a bunch of like stunt casting, like, you know, big old celebrities in those roles. That's maybe a different conversation. But I don't think that's the right move. So I wouldn't even want to really, you know, think too much about that.
Speculate. Yeah.
I think what they're doing with the casting is what I would want them to be doing with the casting. So, I'm pleased with how that's currently looking like it's turning out. I don't know what we're gonna do when that show comes out. Do we review it as a whole? Do we do like one episode where we talk about it in sort of a nothing but static style review where we review the whole show?
I think in my head what I imagined was we review it on Nothing But Static, and then that review gets kind of pulled out and put on the Analysing Avatar channel.
Yeah, I think it's probably fair, isn't it? Yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes. We'll figure it out close to the time. We're definitely not going to do it episode by episode. I can tell you that for nothing, for dear listeners. So,
I think it would be different. I think it would have been different if we were going to be done with Korra by then, but we won't be. So
right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So maybe when we're done Korra, if we're happy to keep doing this, that'll be a discussion for 2024. But like, if we get to 2024 and we want to keep doing this, that's one way we could extend it, is by actually going back to that show episode by episode. But you'll certainly get an episode where we review the first season once we've seen it. So
yeah,
that's as far as we promise for now, and then we'll see how we go. So yeah, thank you. Who did the question? I've already forgotten. Avishai? Yeah, Avishai. Thank you for the question. Good time. Good time was had by all. Other ways you can support the show, if you don't want to do it on Patreon, you can go over to YouTube or iTunes or Spotify or any of those platforms and either support or review. Obviously, another way you can support is by telling a friend. Another way you can support is just by continuing to listen. All of those things are wonderful and very much help. If you've chosen to not support us because you've decided we're bad at this, which is absolutely fair, then feel free to just turn this off, move on with your life. Thanks for giving us a chance.
Yeah. Thank you for giving us a go. No worries. No harm, no foul.
Absolutely. Yeah. You do you. I just think, isn't it funny that phrase has just become like sarcastic by accident now? Like when people first started using that phrase, they were doing it kind of, sincerely. Like, oh no, you do whatever you want to do, that's fine. But I feel like the more people have started using it sarcastically than not, which means when anyone uses it now, whether sincerely or not, it just sounds like sarcasm.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't sound sincere just then, did it, when you said it?
No, I meant it that way. That's the problem.
Yeah,
you can't win.
Did. Yeah,
you literally can't win. Anyway, that's everything for this week. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
And come back in a week's time when we sit down to discuss The Beach. It's a good episode. I'm excited.
What, we're doing a rewind review and doing the Leonardo DiCaprio movie?
Yep. I can give you a little tease if you want, Chris.
Yeah, go
on. We're spending a lot of time with Zuko and Azula.
Ooh, nice. I honestly thought you were going to go, we're spending a lot of time at the beach.
That would have been good too. But I wanted to give you a genuine teaser, Chris, and that's where I'm landing.
That's exciting. Sweet. See you next time, peeps.
Take care, everyone. Bye.